Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you sincerely for having us here. It's a really great opportunity for us to talk to you a bit about hybrid work and about collaboration and the impact there. And there's really three things I'd like to take away from today. First is AI is fundamental to what we do at HP. What do I mean by that? Not only AI PC, which of course is a very, very important topic right now, but also what we're doing in terms of helping your data scientists develop new strategies and local models. And of course, AI PC, as I mentioned, and then finally in collaboration, which is where I'll spend most of my time today. Secondly, we're gonna talk about hybrid work. And I know it's a bit of an overused term, but I want to talk about it in context of how you can improve it, how you can make a better experience for your employees through optimized collaboration. And then finally, I'm going to get into a little bit of the weeds of what we're doing with AI to deliver better audio and video experiences in conference rooms today. So very quickly, just want to cover off, HP has the broadest and most secure platform out there in terms of workstation for you to develop your own models, both desktop and mobile workstation. And as you can see here, we have NPU enablement across the mobile workstation line to allow you to have that location liberation when you're developing new models for your data scientists. But in addition, we also have something called AI Studio. Now, this is a set of tools to help you develop your own models. And it's new, it's in early release. So if you're interested, you can just contact your SHI or HP rep and they can help you with that. Finally, when it comes to HP's AI-enabled PCs, we just had a pretty broad set of announcements into the market. It's had some great press. And again, in addition, you can see that we are now enabling NPU across the business notebook line up to 45 trillion operations per second. And we've been talking a lot about TOPS this week. And also enabled with Copilot Key on almost every model. And again, it's not just about running these new apps like Copilot. It's also about optimizing the system. That one, the second one from the right, actually has 30 hours of battery life using the NPU to help optimize the system. But I primarily wanted to talk to you today about hybrid work and collaboration. So a quick note on hybrid in terms of timeline. Prior to the pandemic, remote work was a convenience. If you lived far enough away, you would work remotely. But if you lived near an office, it was going to be an occasional thing and there was no formal strategy around it. Then, of course, the pandemic happened, and we heard that earlier today. Everyone scrambled. You had to work from home. Everyone was getting compute or collaboration tools, print, anything they could get to have a better work-based experience at home. And that went on for a good year and a half, and a few things happened. We all learned how to work with technology from home. We also joined a lot more virtual meetings, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and others. And we learned to enjoy working from home. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's done a load of laundry in between meetings, working from home, something you can't accomplish in the office. So that worked really well. And then eventually the pandemic ended. And all the employers said, this is great. We'll throw the doors open and welcome everybody with open arms, and nobody came back. And that was kind of a surprise. I met with a lot of large enterprise customers who were kind of concerned with that. So they began to come up with enticement tools, things like free lunches and a pub Thursday and things like that. And those worked to a certain amount, but didn't really work a lot. So we kind of moved into the mandate phase. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that, where the tide turned, and now we're talking about you must be in the office at least some amount of time. So now we've evolved into 2024, and as we go forward, into more hybrid work flexibility. Forbes uses the term structured hybrid. And I think that's probably the majority. We'll find out. But where you have an agreement between the employer and the employees around some number of days in the office and some number of days from home. So it's kind of settled in on that. But a couple of other things about hybrid work. Not surprising, we're not in the office as much as we were prior to the pandemic. That's pretty simple. I follow something called Castle Systems. They monitor badge swipes, and we're still only about 50% from what they show in those businesses. But we are working 10% less from home than we were a year ago, meaning that we're working back towards the mean. People are going back to the office more than they were. And travel has more than doubled. So travel is very active again, and that's important in terms of mobility and hybrid work. The other thing to talk about here is we are joining the same number of meetings for the same duration. but the type of meetings has changed dramatically. There's more in-person meetings because we are coming back to the office, but there's a great increase in hybrid meetings. And if you're going to increase hybrid meetings, you are almost certainly going to increase video enablement of those meetings. And that changes things for you as an IT decision maker in terms of how you're enabling both your employees and the spaces they work in to optimize for hybrid work. So a couple of statistics about, whoops, I don't know if we can't see that. I'll tell you what they say. So about 70% of employees want to work more than 3 days from home. It says 3+ in the statistic. So you have the employer who really wants you in the office 3, maybe even 4 days, and you want to work from home 3 or 4 days, creates a little bit of tension. And the second statistic talks about that about 75% of employees are being asked to work from the office at least 2 days per week. When it comes to meeting rooms, there's a lot of new investment going on into meeting spaces to facilitate this hybrid work modality. And so the statistic there shows that about just under 50% of employers are building new meeting spaces. So it's important to know what you're putting in those spaces. And then finally, and this one I think really stands out, this was from a Freshworks study, and it says that 91% of employees believe that the technology in their office is inadequate for their work. That's a pretty significant number. And what you tend to see looks a little bit more like this. The scene on the left, very, very familiar to probably most. I know we all built out kind of a bespoke, customized environment for ourselves at home. I have a sit-stand desk. I've got a giant curved display. I've got professional lighting. And it really gives me a great opportunity in hybrid meetings. On the right, looks a lot like what I see when I go into our offices. So I have Wi-Fi, I have access to power, I probably have a display, but I'm not getting nearly the kind of optimized experience on the right that I get on the left, which means I kind of don't want to go into the office unless I really have to. So as an employer, you have to earn the commute. Very important, otherwise you're going to continue that friction. So we know why employers want the employees back in the office. They want them there for productivity gains. Employees want to go back for 3 specific reasons. First, working from home can be very distracting, as we all know. And if you're doing especially one-to-one focused work, it's much easier to find a quiet space. Second, and probably the broadest reason, is they want to connect. And not just connect with their friends, which is important, but also to connect to the social and cultural fabric of a company. Especially if a lot of people out there who were hired during COVID, they've never actually met their employer. So being able to go to an office and understand and be connected to that culture really matters. Then finally, probably the most common use cases for learning, training classes, all hands calls, things that you want to come in, you want to meet face to face and experience that. So this is why the employees want to come in. But we're going to start with our first Slido question. So if you can get your phones out, I'd be curious to know what your hybrid work strategy is. We'll just take a few seconds. Hopefully folks can jump in there and give us an answer. And the choices are, are you fully back? Are you structured? Are you fully remote? Not sure? We'll just give it a few more seconds. So my guess is we could probably run this for another 2 or 3 minutes and we're not going to see a huge difference. Structured hybrid is definitely the norm today. And so what you really have to think about is how are you enabling the employees and the spaces they work in to take advantage of this. So we talked about the employees and what they want. HP Poly has actually been going a bit deeper, and we've created some really sort of exhaustive research around the employees themselves. So we started something called the Work Style Persona Research Survey about 10 years ago, and it focuses on people and how they work. Where do they want to work? Do they work alone? Do they work in teams? Are they more on the road? Are they in the office? And we've been running this iteration every couple of years for 10 years. And you can see it's a lot of respondents from all kinds of countries, all kinds of organizations. And what it's led to is this set of archetypes. So you've got what we call work style personas, very focused on people. There are actually 9, so if you add up the numbers, it doesn't add up to 100. There are 2 others that don't really use collaboration tools. But across these 9, you can see where they want to work, how they want to focus. Is it one-to-one? Is it team-based? Am I internal, external? Am I on the go? And then what do I want out of technology? Am I comfortable with complex technology, or do I want it simple? Do I want flexibility and control, or do I just want it to work? So what we've done is we've created these, and again, they get supported pretty much every time we run this iteration, and we've aligned our solution elements to them. So what you see here is, what you see here is our solution set, from collaboration tools to productivity tools like keyboards and mice, to displays, and of course to the compute, and aligned it because it's not a one device fits all kind of market. So this just helps you with kind of a baseline of what you might want. So one thing to note, we have a leave behind for you here. We have a very, very detailed version of this that goes into each archetype very specifically. And it's available for you to download if you're interested. And if you want to know more about it, we're happy to talk with you more. So second Slido question. We're going to talk about collaboration. So I'd like to know your involvement with it. Are you responsible for collaboration decisions in your company? Are you an influencer, but not necessarily responsible? And are you just, I just use the stuff. Give that a couple seconds. Okay, I think that gives us a pretty good picture. So pretty much everyone in the room is in some way involved in this. And that's going to matter. So we're going to spend some time specifically on what we're doing with collaboration to enhance hybrid work. So we have a couple of technologies that we reference quite often in the Poly side of the business. One's called audio AI and the other is called director AI. They've both been around for years. An example of audio AI would be, we have something we call acoustic fence. And what that does is it uses AI and mics to establish an invisible barrier around you. So literally, if I were standing here and I set the barrier up in this particular fashion, people could be talking in either one of these chairs and no one at the far end would hear it without me doing anything. Even people behind me wouldn't be heard. It's a really, really interesting technology. We've also built some algorithms that help us understand the difference between human voice, speech, and any other sound. So you can be clicking a keyboard, you can be munching chips, you can do any of those things and it won't be heard in the call. And I'll show you one other audio advancement we just came out with. Director AI is kind of a suite of camera technologies, and they solve a number of business problems. Initially, it was just, how do I see more than one person in the room? How do I move the camera appropriately? But we've really advanced that into a multi-camera strategy that I'll show you. So I'll start with kind of the basic problem to solve. What you see here is a conference room, pretty standard. There's a system at the front of the room. It's capturing the room. And it's capturing right now everyone in one shot, but even if it captured them individually, you're still seeing the back of his head, the side of her face. And as a remote participant, we've all been in this situation. You start to get disengaged. You're not really part of the conversation. So you check your phone and email, and pretty soon that meeting is really not for you. So we're working through that by doing something called modular room. And what modular room is we're taking multiple cameras and also things like mics and speakers, and we're connecting them over IP, so very easy to deploy, lower cost. And we're taking a room like you see on the left and representing it like you see on the right. So essentially using 3 different cameras, all in real time, showing everyone in the best possible view we can show them. And we do that by referencing each person discretely on each camera in real time. So this takes AI, takes our large learning model to do this effectively. But as you can see here, there are 3 cameras. And in this particular case, it selected that gentleman with camera 2 at that particular time. What we then do is we build it into what we call framing modes. These are production rules, and by the way, we're not the only one who does this. Our competitors do it as well. What these are just different modalities for you to experience the call. The one on the left is actually great for small groups. It just expands and contracts based on who's in the meeting automatically. We can focus on an individual speaker. We can use the one in the center called people framing, which became very popular after the pandemic because that's the view everyone was used to seeing when you were working from home. And then we also can track a presenter, so in a situation like this, the camera would automatically pan and follow me. And the whole point of it, though, is to really get to that bottom image where we're capturing every person as best we can in as cinematic a fashion as we can. And so there's some rules around the resolution that we require. And also, there's something called head height. It's a standard production rule. You want at least 45% head height when you're framing someone so that you have that kind of image. So all this is happening in real time across every camera. This is what that room looks like when you use it with a single center of the room camera and the front of room. So now that's the exact same, that is the same picture of those people, but now it's using the center of the room camera at the same time. And you can see it's a very, very different experience to the far end. And we can add multiple cameras, multiple center of the room. That's a 360-degree camera, by the way. We can add multiple of those. We can add long throw cameras. We can really create a very bespoke experience, very flexible and customized to the type of spaces that you're in. So, question is, how do we do it? So I'm going to show you a couple of videos. They're not super polished. They're actually from our engineering and CTO team, but I think they do an effective job of telling you how it's done. So on the left, we've got 4 developers in a traditional view. On the right, we see them in an optimized view. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. First, we find the people. This isn't necessarily their identity. I don't know that that's Steven, but I do know that that's a discrete person. So if you look, we'll start to create these identifiers for each person. If I play the video, you'll see on multiple cameras that person is in the blue box. So now we know who that person is on every camera simultaneously. We then do something called head pose. So we're monitoring every face in real time on every camera, and we're using those 3 axes, kind of like pitch, yaw, and roll, like a fighter jet, but basically using those to determine where is the best angle to view them from. So again, you'll see this video and the lines will move around, but ultimately what it's doing is scoring each of these faces in real time on each camera. Then ultimately what it leads to is a composition that we have here. So if you watch this video, you'll see that the gentleman at the bottom, the 2 camera images are at the top, and right now it's sending the one in the center to the far end because that's the best view, that's where he's looking. When he turns to his left, you'll see that the camera is going to change and show up from the front of the room. When he turns back to the center, it's going to go back to the center of the table. There's nothing he's doing. This is just the algorithm working in the background. But one of the problems with finding all these faces that's relatively new is that when you have a system that can find human faces, it finds faces you don't want to find. So that guy's not part of this meeting. But if you think about it, you're telling the camera to find him. So what we've done is we created a new set of algorithms that score the human face, but also work with the geometry of the space to create a very, very effective barrier to that person joining the meeting. And I'll show you in a video how it works. So the blue box represents what is actually being shown into the call. So you can see the 2 people, they have green boxes around their heads, they're effectively framed. And now this gentleman will walk down the hall. And the first thing you'll notice is the blue box doesn't change, and the box around his face is red because the scoring algorithm is saying he's not appropriate for this call. But if you pay attention, watch what happens when he walks into the room, almost immediately. The system recognizes he's in the room. It reframes the image so that he's in it. Again, no one did anything. This is happening automatically. So now, if he were to leave the room or someone else would leave the room, it would reframe again without them there. So this is happening, again, across every camera in real time. So one other thing, and I don't know how well this will work in here, so I'll give a little caveat up front. We've also looked at what these glass walls and other reflective surfaces can do to the audio in the room. So if you're familiar with the term reverb, you'll know that in a reflective room, you're going to hear a lot of kind of tiny echoes that are happening. And what that does is it sort of diffuses the audio. It's harder to hear people, especially if you're in different languages, and it makes them sound kind of like they're further away. We've all been in a big room and heard this. So I'm going to play a video. Hopefully you'll be able to hear the difference. If it's not compelling here, I recommend going to our YouTube channel and listening. It's very, very clear when you listen to it there. But here we go. So hopefully you could hear that. Again, if you didn't, go to the YouTube channel. It's very clear. And again, this is how we're leveraging AI, both from a chipset perspective and also the learning models that we've built over several years and a group of very talented audio engineers to process this all in real time. Okay, last question. What is your primary meeting platform? I bet many of you have more than one, but typically there is a dominant one. A lot of times, especially through acquisition, you might have, someone prefers a different one, but I'll be interested to see what this shows. And I might even let this go a little bit longer. I really want to get a good balanced response from the audience. Okay, that seems to be settling down. That's eerie. That's almost exactly what you would find in like a Gartner report. Microsoft Teams is the absolute dominant player in the market. It was interesting because during COVID, you saw this rapid, massive increase of Zoom meetings, but it started creating these customers they call Zeems customers. where they've got Zoom and they've got Teams, and over time, Teams has continually improved the experience and taken this very dominant position. Then you see the other players, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, GoTo, and others. And the reason I brought this up is, if you don't know, oops, this is actually out of sequence. Oh, can I go back one? Shoot, if it's not there, that's fine. I'll explain it to you. We support the broadest array of native applications in our products. So what does that mean? It means we support Teams as a native application, both in Android and in Windows. We support it. We support Zoom. We support Google Meet, and we support a host of others. And then for other platforms that we don't support natively, like Cisco WebEx, we support through interoperability. So Microsoft provides some of that interoperability. We also do it through standards-based calls. If you're familiar with SIP calling or H323, we do it that way. And then finally, we have another modality called basically bring your own device. So you can take the same system that's running Teams, but you can walk into the room with your own laptop and join a meeting of your choice. And then as soon as you're done, you disconnect and it goes back to being a Teams room. So very effective there. One other thing I wanted to cover off, actually two things before we close out. First, HP has made a significant investment in Poly in the past year and a half, and it's really starting to show in some of the deliverables we have. But first and foremost, if you think of Microsoft Teams Room, it kind of comes in two flavors. There's the purpose-built appliance, typically running Android, and then there's a Windows-based version. Now, Microsoft typically puts more features into the Windows version. There's a little more horsepower, and also, they have a lot more Windows developers than they do Android. And so there are some people who prefer Windows versus Android. There are many who prefer Android. But what I really want to talk about is this is the first time a single vendor has brought to market a Windows-based solution that is very powerful and built for the connectivity you need in a conference room. So HP and Poly developers work together to build a very purpose-built solution for this. And it's really the first in a series, because eventually we're going to add NPU into that. And as Copilot starts to add things like sentiment analysis in a live meeting and voice print analysis and things like that that will require more compute, we will be there to deliver that for you. So that's an important one. Second one, Poly Studio. So you heard a bunch of audio enhancements we do. We're now delivering them in HP laptops, and you'll see the Poly Studio branding going forward. Third, Bluetooth Direct. I don't know how many folks here have an enterprise headset that they use, but typically when you connect to a Windows PC, you have a USB dongle. Those USB dongles obviously take up a port. They can be lost. If you have more than one headset, they can be confused for one another. And sometimes they even cause an issue if you're putting it in the bag and it gets caught or whatever. So what we've done is we've created, dare I say, a kind of Apple-like experience where you take any HP laptop and you take a Poly headset, and they will automatically pair without a dongle. And the Poly Lens software will pop up. It allows you to customize the headset, allows you to download software, again, without any interaction and without a dongle. So that's important. Last two quickly, HP Managed Collaboration Services. We're just offering new consumption models. You've heard a lot about that today. So it's an as-a-service model. It allows us to assume the risk and technology refresh for a recurring cost versus a CapEx purchase. And then finally, something over the horizon, we're using your PC as a room input. You can use your local camera, your headset, your microphone, speakers locally, and be engaged into the call that way. The last thing, some announcements on our platform. So I'll just go through very quickly. We have released and we are releasing a large array of new products into the market. So new bars, new cameras, new engines. And the Windows one right there I mentioned is the second one over. We also have a new Android-based engine, and I showed it there because it enables all that modular room functionality, but it's less than half the cost of our current product. So we're driving costs down while increasing flexibility. The last thing I want to leave you with is, take a look at that video on the right. We just announced a partnership with Google with a product called Starline. This is AI in collaboration at its cutting edge. That woman that you see there is being shown in 3D without glasses on a lenticular display. But that's not actually her. That is a digital clone. It's a 3D artifact being built in real time. And when you experience it, it is transformational. Now, this isn't a meeting platform like Google Meet or certainly like Teams or Zoom. It's a one-to-one video collaboration experience, but it is incredible to see. And if there are applications like executive calls or talent reviews, things like that. It's going to be very powerful. And we're bringing this to market about this time next year. So last thing, just work style personas. I mentioned the research is available for you to download. I think that's it. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.